here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Welcome back to One Leg Up with Alex Garrett, and we're going to have a leg up with Kevin D. Miller, author Miller. You know, it's been a while. Great to have you back.
Oh, it's great being back, Alex, man. I always love talking to you. And, yeah, it's been a little while since we last chatted, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
You delve into the Native American roots. We'll get to that in a bit. But I got to say, for those who don't know who Kevin Miller is, first of all, you got to follow him on Twitter. Secondly, we met over like a Thanksgiving week because your book was pitched as something to talk about at the Thanksgiving dinner table because it's not good to keep secrets, and your grandfather had quite the secret, right? But, you know, that's where we kicked it off, just for reference here.
Yeah, no, that's where we kicked it off. It was a pretty shocking secret to find out that your last name is not your real last name, you know, and even your father didn't know that. So, yeah, it was pretty striking to find these old newspaper articles from 1920 and find out that my last name is really Puchalski and not Miller. And more shocking, the reason why my grandfather changed our name in 1920, you know, to hide a dark family secret, a tragic family secret where my great-grandfather was murdered, you know. So there was kind of a mystery there, and it took a lot of research to kind of figure stuff out. And once we got it all figured out, I wrote the book Heart of Steel based on a true story. You know, based on my family's history and this shocking secret that just kind of came out of nowhere.
And now, by the way, you can be followed at Heart of Steel Bo1, B-O-1, in honor of Heart of Steel. And now you've delved into the Native American roots, but obviously, as a Jamestown, Ohio native, wouldn't your grandfather have rushed to the scene of this toxic waste situation they're dealing with in Ohio right now? I feel like he would have been on the scene as heroic as he was.
Yeah, he's really that kind of a man, and that would not surprise me one bit. And yes, I would say he would be right there, you know, helping everybody out, doing everything he can, and being a good neighbor, you know, and a good friend. That's the kind of person he was, you know. I mean, he was only 12, 13 years old when this tragedy happened to him, and he had to just kind of grow up and be a man quickly and take over, you know, the care of his family. So, yeah, he's that type of man. He would be right there, you know, pitching in and helping and doing anything he could to, you know, to help his neighbors and help the folks in that tragic situation.
And for those who are just hearing about this book for the first time, where can people find it? It's still sellable on Amazon and buyable there, I should say, right?
Oh, yeah. You can find it on Amazon.com. It's Heart of Steel book based on a true story by Kevin D. Miller. You can also find that link, the link to all my books, on my website, which is authorkevinmiller.com. That's authorkevinmiller.com. I've got all my links to all four of my books that I currently have out. I'm working on the fifth one. But, yeah, you can find it there, or you can just Google it. You can probably find it that way as well.
Well, and I know that, you know, one of the reasons I have you back is because you've updated your portfolio, if you will, as an author, and you're also, a member of the military, a veteran, and now you've gone into writing. So why have you continued into the Native American roots with Taquoma? Now, not Tacoma, Washington, Taquoma. Why did you continue off your other Native American works into Tacoma?
Yeah, that's interesting, Alex. The name Taquoma is a Native American name for Mount Rainier in Washington State, and actually there's a movement to rename Mount Rainier Taquoma, and obviously it's where the city Tacoma's name derives from. But I thought it was appropriate for this. That's my latest book, Taquoma. And I thought it appropriate to name it that because that's where the story begins. It begins on Mount Rainier in Washington. The protagonist is, a young volcanologist that's doing her dissertation research to get her doctorate in volcanology. She's a Yellowstone expert, and that's where we find her. That's where the story opens up, is she's taking readings, on the side of Mount Rainier.
And I know that it's become like a fast seller, hasn't it? It's been a successful one so far.
Yeah, no, it's doing real well. Selling really good. Selling a lot of the ebooks and the paperbacks, which is the two versions I have it available in right now. But I've got it submitted to a lot of book awards, and just kind of waiting to hear back and seeing how it does there. It got a 5-star review on Reader's Favorite recently. So yeah, and everybody that's read it so far just loves the story. I mean, it's kind of an interesting story. Like I said, it starts out on the side of Mount Rainier with this young volcanologist who a NASA team, a USGS team comes and kind of kidnaps her off the side of the mountain because they've got a bigger problem than Mount Rainier in Yellowstone. So she gets kind of swooped up into that, but she also gets swooped up into the politics of this big NASA program to figure out how to deal with the Yellowstone problem. They're thinking of drilling, kind of fracking and drilling and pumping cold water into the next to the caldera to try to cool it down, and in the process take the thermal energy, the steam, which wouldn't be very profitable as well. But she kind of gets mixed up in that, the politics of that, and she's the kind of the voice warning, saying, hey, if you guys hit one of these fractures, in here, you can set this thing off. Instead of cooling it down, you can set it off. And here's the interesting thing, Alex. When I wrote this book, I was thinking in my head, how could you do that? I tried to figure this out, and I really pieced that together, how you could cool this thing down and all that stuff. And during my research, I found out there really is a program, a $3.5 billion program by NASA to do exactly that. So I was really kind of proud of myself, and coming up with that. And reading through, their specs and how they would do it kind of filled in some blanks for me as well.
Well,
so
this is a real-life situation because Yellowstone has been showing signs of eruption, and it's kind of interesting you wrote this in that time. I don't know if that inspired you, but I believe the national park has been closed a couple of times now because they've been worried about its erupting, haven't they?
Yeah, they absolutely have. I mean, the ground rises, which is not uncommon. The ground does rise, as the magma kind of pushes up. They have satellites that keep track of this stuff, and they have, the universities keep track of earthquakes that are going, that show up all the time. There's earthquakes every day, but some of the bigger ones that are showing. So the patterns and stuff are kind of disturbing, kind of alarming. And that's kind of what my character, Yara Del Rey, tries to tell this team of scientists. It's like, hey, this stuff, some of this stuff is normal, but yeah, this other stuff's kind of alarming, and we got to be careful here what we do, because if this thing blows, it's a super volcano. A caldera is a super volcano, and it would decimate the United States. It would put us in a winter for years around the world with all the the ash and sulfur dioxide, everything that it would spew out. Sulfur dioxide reflects sunlight, so it would cool everything down, which would just kill crops and people would starve. It would be catastrophic, and that's kind of what one of the points of the book is we really need to take care of Mother Earth, because Mother Earth could wipe us out, in an instant. So the story also too is what would happen if all the volcanoes in the world went off at once? What would happen there? Would we survive that? Well, if you want to find out, order the book and look through it, because I kind of wrote it with that in mind, the story, and the story is also about a mother. Because when this thing finally goes off, she's in Yellowstone, and her 6-year-old daughter is in Taquoma, Washington. Now the story really begins and takes off at a fast pace, because she's got to go back to Taquoma to rescue her daughter somehow in this new world, this new unrecognizable world. So she sets out to do that. So it's a story about the strength of a mother or any parent. It's a strength of love. It's a strength of a family, having to just begin again, new beginnings and stuff. So, and a message.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you are a parent of 2 actresses, but I know that as a parent, it sounds like you're writing your own fears into this, of putting your own daughters into this world, right?
Yeah.
There's a real fear here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every story I write, I mean, it's comes from personal experiences, and I pull from my own daughters and my own family. I mean, a lot of these characters, have the characteristics of people I know and love, and I learned from them, and I implement that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the huge fear of what would happen if this really happened, and I was 1,000 miles away from my child. How do I get back there to rescue her? What do I do? So it's a harrowing journey that she takes, and she gets the help of an ex-Navy pilot that has his own flight school. He has aircraft and weather balloons, racing balloons, and she kind of gets his help she wants to go look, check out Yellowstone from the balloon, and that's when the inciting incident happens, and it goes off, and they're hurled together on this journey. So so there's a lot there. I mean, there's romance in it. There's a little bit of everything in this book and this story. So I think it would be a good story for really any reader in any genre.
Well, what's interesting is that you've gone from real reality, like a real life story of your grandfather, to this fictional world. Is there a pivot that you have to make, or is there because you have that real life experience, you're putting reality into these fictional stories, so it's not not a difficult transition, if you will, from the real life story to fiction, if you will?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's really any transition, Alex, because I do so much research. I did a ton of research on this book. Every book I write, I do a ton of research because I want to be completely accurate with what I'm writing down. So it's kind of a little educational too at the same time, but that makes it realistic. It's like, because this is kind of speculative fiction in a way too, because it's like, this could happen. This is stuff that it's not far-fetched. I mean, it could happen, and I'm just bringing it to life to say, if it happens, this is how I see, things would go based on the research that I've done. So I think it'd be a very interesting story for anybody to read. And I'd be glad to send you a copy too. You can check it out. I will.
I know, and I definitely enjoyed reading about Stan Puchalski's journey, and I know I'm going to enjoy reading about not only Taquoma, but also White Skies, Black Mingo, which was your first real delving into Native American roots, because I believe that was based on your family, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. My second novel is historical fiction, but it was inspired by my great grandmother, who was Ohio Seneca. They had a kind of derogatory term for them called a Mingo, which meant fierce, really the fierceness of their warriors. But it's part of the Haudenosaunee Nation, which we more commonly know as the Iroquois. Haudenosaunee is what they really want to be referred to, not the Iroquois. But yeah, I saw that it's during the Civil War, and she married my great grandfather, who was a son of Irish immigrants. And to me, I was kind of thinking, well, my wife is Hispanic, and she has a lot of Native American in her. I'm Irish. I'm mostly a white man. With some Native roots like that. But I'm thinking it's a mixed marriage. In 1865, they wouldn't even be legally allowed to marry. What a great love story. What a great challenge that would be, just thinking about that. So that kind of inspired the story for me. So the story is really about a coming of age for a young girl. We meet her when she's 12 years old. She's fleeing with her shaman grandmother and her mother from an epidemic of smallpox. And she ends up orphaned and alone in the wilderness, and she just her life goes through so many things, but she finds her strength. That she finds that she's really a strong character and a strong woman in the way that she rises up to meet this. But the story is also a romance. It's also a love story of how she meets my great grandfather and how two worlds kind of come together. So it's a beautiful story. It's my wife's favorite story. She loves all my books, but that's kind of her favorite because she loves romance stories and that sort of thing. But yeah, I used a lot of the history and everything I could find about both of them, and then I just integrated into a historical fictional story.
Will we see Kevin Miller in the fight to rename Mount Rainier? Is he going to be on the front lines in Washington State?
I'm watching it close, Alex. I'm watching it close. I try not to overstep my boundaries because I do have a great grandmother who is Native American, but I'm humble enough and not to claim to be Native American, or I'm respectful of that culture, not to say just because I have an ancestor that makes me Native American. That's really, not the direction I want to go. But to support that, yes, I'm very supportive of Native peoples and the struggle that they have faced for centuries. And yes, I mean, that's, to me, I would definitely support that in any way that I could. And so I'm kind of watching it and keeping a close eye on it to see where that goes.
And how much legs does it have? Does it have a good set of legs to stand on?
It seems to be. I mean, the press is, there's, if you Google Taquoma, you'll find a lot of articles on that. You'll find my book too, but you'll find some articles on that where it does look like the push is pretty strong, and they may get that and may not. I mean, it's hard to say the powers that be, that win out in situations like that. But there have been a lot of monuments and sacred places in America, in Arizona, even where I'm from, that the names have been changed and changed to Native American names or returned to the Native American names. So I think it's got a good chance to do that.
Now, has this research of the Native American roots, if you will, has it changed your thoughts on these teams? Because you're a big sports fan, and you and I think alike on the changing of these names. Is it disrespectful, actually, that they changed the names, or is there a respect level? I mean, we've now seen the Guardians and Commanders, and maybe more on the rise. We don't know yet. But it seems like the Native American community was okay with all these names before the activists stepped in, right?
I do, man. We've talked about this kind of thing before, Alex, and my feelings are just that. I mean, I think a small percentage of people make the loudest amount of noise, and a lot of folks are afraid, to say, hey, hold on a second, because it's been my experience too, and personal experience, that most Native Americans, people, friends that I have and people I've listened to, have no problem with, they had no problem with, say, the Washington Redskins, because the logo was designed by a Native American, and it's just, I guess how, it's kind of a touchy area. I mean, it's like I'm Irish, I'm not offended by the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, that to me, that's kind of cool, So, trying to be sensitive to the thought and stuff. But like you said, I think most Native communities don't have a problem with, the Cleveland Indians or the Washington Redskins or, some of the, because to me, just from a personal standpoint, to me, it's kind of honoring, a tribe, or it's kind of honoring a people and stuff. I hope it's not, I would hope it wouldn't be seen as derogatory. And if it, if it's something that is derogatory or offensive, to most Native Americans, then I would say, yeah, definitely change the name or if that's the consensus. But I don't see that as a consensus. I agree with you. It seems like the majority are okay with it and good with it. So we just jump. Mm-hmm.
I have another question, because on a more real sense,
sure.
There have been communities, and I guess reservations, I could say, that have had missing people. Girls are gone missing from these different Native American tribes. And in your research, did you run into that? Did you research that even further as you were writing these books?
Yeah, it's a big problem, and it's a big problem that is not addressed enough in the press. I mean, a lot of people don't know about this. There are so many indigenous people, mostly women that disappear on reservations, that just, they're murdered. They're and it's looking into that. I mean, it's not always Native Americans that are murdering them. It's indigenous people that are carrying out these crimes, and these people are disappearing, and it's just a horrifying and disturbing number. And it's like, why isn't this being looked into more, thoroughly and deeply, and to see, why is this happening? What laws need to be changed? How can we help the reservations, help protect, their people? These people, they live in America. They're Americans too. It's like, where's the help? Where's the press on this? Where's the outrage?
Well, I want to delve back into something you said earlier, which is about life experiences. So give us a couple of life experiences that, along this portfolio of books you've authored, went into. It's like a combination, right, of life experiences. So give us a couple that really stand out, just to get to know more about, Kevin D. Miller behind the scenes, if you will, behind the ink.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, we all have our stories, and I'm always telling my children, it's like, you know, we all hold the pen in our hand. You know, if you don't like your story and the way it's going, you've got the pen and the power in your hand to write a new chapter or write a new book. You know, that's kind of my philosophy, is that we have more power than we realize that we do. My children, you know, my children have been a profound effect on my life and the way I see life, and I see things through their eyes. I learn from them. I learn so much from them. White Skies, Black Mingo, I got so many compliments from women, actually, that said if they didn't know the book was written by a man through a woman's perspective, they would have thought it was a woman, because they said I nailed it so well from a woman's perspective and so respectful that they wouldn't have believed a man wrote it. And they're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, well, because I'm surrounded by so many women, I have so many daughters and a sister. And I said, and I listen to them, you know, and I really listen to what they say, what they feel, what they think. And I think I have a really good understanding of women in general, you know, so they teach me that, you know, just by listening to them and asking them questions, you know, and my wife.
Your
really
award
good.
actually was won by a women's group, wasn't it? There was an award given to you by a women's group?
Yeah, well, the biggest award for White Skies, Black Mingo won 9 major book awards, and the one I'm most proud of is Next Generation Indie Book Awards, which is an international book awards, and it won in regional fiction for it. It was the winner. Actually won some award money too. It was kind of cool, but yeah, and then you know, it also won a Mom's Choice Award. The Mom's Choice Award is looking for you know, stuff that's wholesome, that's good, and they gave it the Gold Award based on its representation of not only Native Americans and how respectful and truthful and honest it was to portray Native Americans, but also from a woman's point of view, you know, that it was very real, very respectful, very honest, and yeah, so it won the gold, you know, for those portrayals, which I was very proud of, very humbled by, but very proud of that fact.
How do you write? You know, this is very, I would say, intense content that you're writing, right? So how do you make it family friendly so that you do get the Mom's Choice Awards or those kind of family oriented awards?
You just have to watch the language a little bit. I mean, we use derogatory language, all of us, in our daily lives. So we got to keep it, you know, normal, you know, without going over the top with it a little bit. And then just being real, you know, with the dialogue, you know, that when people are reading that, they're like, you know, this sounds like a real conversation, you know, and keeping it, keeping it honest and real, I think, you know, because I think some books might get a little bit to where, okay, this seems kind of not believable, you know, or it's kind of using a little bit too much derogatory language, or it's painting a picture that's not so, you know, I'm not saying that my books are wholesome, you know, but they're real. They're real life, you know. I don't, you know, sugarcoat anything, you know, but I try not to be vulgar either, or, you know, to too much an extent. You know, some parts I may be trying to be funny or using humor, you know, and some humor, you know, has a little bit of vulgarity in it, but so it's a good mix of that, and just trying not to overdo, you know, any one thing, to where there's a good balance in there for anybody, you know, that wants to read it.
All right, I'm sensing that you can actually maybe make this an educational thing for kids as well, because, you know, they may not get the, I don't know how to say it, but they may not get the accurate history of what the Native Americans went through. So can this become an educational resource? Are you in talks with schools about this as curriculum, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I really feel so, because like we talked earlier, it's like I do a lot of research. I really try to make my research as accurate as I possibly can. And I talk to people, I interview people, you know, not just necessarily research in libraries and different things, but I actually like to talk to Native Americans if I'm writing about Native Americans and that culture. You know, I want to learn the culture and why they do things and where the traditions came from. You know, I spent a lot of time learning the the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois traditions, and implementing those those stories and traditions into my story, to give it even more, a realistic feel. But it's definitely educational. I mean, I have a lot of comments, even with Taquoma. I've had people say that not only did the book just take them on a wild ride and just a wonderful story with unpredictable twists and turns, but they felt they learned something too, a little educational. They could tell the research that was done, and that made me feel good that some of the readers recognized how much research was put into to make the book accurate as well as a good story.
All right, $1 million question, because I know that
Sure.
It's in the works for Puchalski, for Stanley Puchalski. But could your other books hit the big screen as well? I know that's a big goal of yours, to get this written work.
Oh man,
onto the big screen.
I would absolutely love that. I would, and I get, and from my perspective, I want to think so, but I base it on what my readers say, and I get so many readers that say, "Oh my gosh, this would make a great movie." Every single book, from White Skies, Black Mingo, to Eyes of Morpheus, to Taquoma, and of course Heart of Steel. It's like they're like, because I write from what's called a close point of view, where you are actually the character in the book. I mean, you're seeing the world through the character's eyes. You are the character as you're reading my story. So it's kind of cinematic, so you can picture it on the big screen. But I get a lot of comments that I really feel I would love to show all these books to, potential producers and studios, to consider optioning, for movies. Absolutely.
Any book tours that we should know about? I mean, I wish you'd come to New York. I'd love to meet you in person finally. That'd be
great. No, I know. I absolutely would love to do that. There's not anything in the immediate future. I do hope to go back to West Virginia for the West Virginia Book Festival coming up later this year. And then towards the end of the year, November, there's the Southern Christmas Show in Charlotte, North Carolina, that gets a lot of people through their headline books, sets up shop in there. I'm going to try to make that one as well. But then I want to kind of get some set up out here on the West as well, so I don't have to travel quite so far, But
right, you're in Arizona. Yeah, so, by the way, were you in town at all for the Super Bowl? Did you take part in any activities out there, or what?
Yeah, we're back and forth, because we have a place in Burbank and we have a place in just outside of Phoenix and stuff. But yeah, I wasn't in town during the Super Bowl, but I have been in the past, and it's crazy. It gets wild, but they do a good job in Phoenix. I mean, Cardinal Stadium, is a beautiful stadium, and it's set there. The freeways and stuff are set, for pretty good access and stuff. People don't have a hard time getting in and out, and it's just a fun atmosphere. And it's always exciting when the Super Bowl comes to your city, your state. So that was pretty cool. But no, I was actually here in Burbank, and I watched the game on TV, and that's one of the best Super Bowls I've watched in a long time, man. That was so entertaining.
And the hold was legit, people. The holding was legit. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have bad calls. We know this, I mean, referees are human, and, and they're going to make mistakes. And it's sad when a mistake, can really turn the tide on a football game, or any ball game. But, that's part of the sport, too. That's part of it. And that's part of the hurt. That's part of the agony of defeat. When you had a bad call that, could have made a difference in a game. But overall, both teams just played lights out. They just played lights out. The quarterbacks, Mahomes. I mean, I was just so entertained, by the Super Bowl. And I think
Mahomes is a warrior. You talk about a warrior.
He's a warrior. My gosh, he's a warrior. Yeah, I remember watching him at Texas Tech when ASU played him one year. I'm an Arizona State Sun Devil fan. Obviously, I grew up in Tempe, but we had a shootout with Mahomes when he was at Texas Tech, and I think ASU won that game like 62 to 55 or something like that, some wild thing. But he's been that way in college and through the pros. He's going to go down as one of the greats. He's got that it factor, like the Joe Montanas and of past.
100%. Well, any way people can reach you? I know you have the website, and I know you're on LinkedIn. You're very active on LinkedIn. Is that the best place for people to shoot you an email, shoot you a note at?
Yeah, well, the best place to reach me is if you go to my website. I got all my contact information on there. I've got links to all my social media. So just authorkevinmiller.com, and it has links to all my social media. It has my email link. I might even have my cell phone number up there. Just don't call me at 2 a.m.
Uh-huh.
But I love hearing feedback from my readers. I love a lot of times I'll get an email saying they read my book and asking questions, or just dropping in to make a comment. Reviews, that's what authors always beg for, because there's no better way to show your appreciation to an author than doing a book review on Amazon or Goodreads or anywhere.
Oh, those Goodreads
So
go a long way. I know that. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. It gives validity to the book, and it tells people, what you thought of the book, and it kind of gives them an idea whether they want to read it, if the book's for them or not. But it's deeply appreciated when readers will take the time to write a review. So.
And as I say,
yeah,
I think this could be such an educational resource. So if you're a teacher out there, can they give you a ring as well if they're teaching a class? And
Yes.
I'd like to get you on.
Absolutely. Yeah, not only that. I mean, I definitely do speaking engagements, and I would love to. I sent a message to my old high school, Tempe High School, and I told them, I would love to come to English class or just, come and talk about, any of your students that have thought about becoming a book author or writing, and just kind of, be an inspiration to them that you can do this at any time in your life. I mean, you can change your career at any time. I've been so many things in my life, and in this latter part of my life, I'm a book author now, and I wish I discovered the love of this sooner. I've always been a storyteller, as a kid and stuff. I always was able to come up with these stories, and they've always been there, just waiting to get written down. But now I'm putting all these stories down on paper and books and stuff. But I would love to speak with, if there's any teachers, educators, I would love to come, talk to your class or to your school, about any of these books, the topics, writing in general, being an author. Absolutely available for that.
Well, let's let me post that up there as such, and hopefully get to some traction. But Kevin D. Miller, always a pleasure, sir. And let's not be strangers. Let's talk more, and as things get going this year.
Absolutely. I'm always down for that, Alex. Always down for it. And I always love our conversations and appreciate talking to you, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And again, that's Heart of Steel Bo1, BO1 on Twitter for the OG, as they say, in homage of Heart of Steel, which is where Kevin's writing journey started right then and there in Jamestown, Ohio.